about the cranial nerves, and again, this is my standard diagram. Hopefully, everybody's familiar with the fact that this is going to be your midbrain, right? This is your pons, this is your medulla, and here's your cerebellum. Okay, so everybody got that? So we are, and there's your cerebral aqueduct, which is a real nice landmark to start with. The way that I like to think about the cranial nerves is that there are, how many are there total? 12, good. Believe it or not, there are 4 above the pons, there are 4 in the pons, and then there are 4 below the pons. Real easy way to remember it, okay? And they go in order. So 1, 2, 3, and 4 are above the pons. 5, 6, 7, and 8 are in the pons. 9, 10, 11, 12 are below the pons. So when you're thinking about patient presentation and the function of the cranial nerves, if you know the function of the cranial nerve and its number, you can put it in a place on the brainstem. And hopefully we'll go through and see that today. So talking about the first cranial nerve. Does anybody know the first cranial nerve? Yeah, olfactory. Okay, the olfactory nerve is, this is my rendition of a nose. Okay, so the olfactory nerve here resides, first cranial nerve resides in your nasal cavity. Okay, they're just short little segments of nerve, and that's cranial nerve number 1. It's your olfactory nerve. Okay. Olfactory nerve, that sensory information is the only thing that doesn't go through the thalamus. And just basic information for you. Second cranial nerve, again, above the brain. So this is well above the midbrain, right? Well above the pons. So it resides in your nasal cavity. So that's cranial nerve number 1. Cranial nerve number 2, again, well above the nasal cavity. Here is my rendition of an eyeball. We'll talk more about eyeball structure and function and stuff like that when we get to vision. But the second cranial nerve comes out of the retina, and that's your, does anybody know the name of the second cranial nerve? Optic. This is the optic. Yep. Third is oculomotor. It's okay. Thanks for asking or answering. Second cranial nerve is your optic. O-P. Wish I could spell T-I-C. Optic nerve. O-P-T-I-C. Okay. If I had to point to the nerve, here's the nerve right here. Coming out of the back of the eyeball. So well above the pons. Third cranial nerve. Now we're moving on down to the midbrain. So we're going to be in the brain stem proper. And I talked about the third cranial nerve way back when we did blood supply to the brain. Remember the basilar artery comes up just above the level of the third cranial nerve, branches off to form the PCA bilaterally. So here's your third cranial nerve. It's at the top of the brainstem. And that's, again, this is going to be bilaterally, so I'm going to put a brief representation of the middle there. And your third cranial nerve. Here. And there's cranial nerve number 2, cranial nerve number 1, both are bilateral as well. Okay, the rest I can draw bilaterally. This is your third cranial nerve. Does anybody know the name of the third one? Yes, this is oculomotor. Question? No? Got it? Okay. That's your oculomotor. It's going to be responsible for most of the eye movements. We'll talk about that here in a minute. Now we're just looking at position. So going down, you have 1 nose, and then optic, and then oculomotor coming down. The oculomotor is at the top of the midbrain. It's at the level of something called the superior colliculus. We're going to look at that when we look at brainstem, but it's that's the top of the midbrain. And then just going on down, we have the fourth cranial nerve. It's the only one, the fourth cranial nerve is the only one that exits the brainstem from the back, okay? And then it appears around the front. It's at the level of something called the inferior colliculus, so it actually resides below the level of the third cranial nerve. Okay. Fourth cranial nerve, anybody know which one that is? Trochlear, yeah. Fourth cranial nerve is trochlear. 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 Okay, so just going down in order. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Those are the 4 that reside above the pons.
And you said that exits through the inferior colliculus?
No, it's at the level of the inferior colliculus. So at the top of the midbrain, there's a superior colliculus. We'll talk more about that. Do you have the bottom? Yeah, inferior colliculus, yeah, there.
Do we just need to know for location based upon like where they're at with relative to the ponds or their specific location?
You're going to have to know their specific location. And that's going to be important for when right now, we're just taking a brief look at the outside. We're eventually going to migrate into the inside and see what the inside of the brainstem looks like, because all these are the cranial nerves proper that you see on the outside of the brainstem, but they are attached, or they're arising from nuclei, specific nuclei inside the brainstem. So that's all going to come into play.
So for 3, would we just call that like midbrain?
3 comes from the midbrain at the level of the superior colliculus. Okay, so all of the cranial nerves are going to exit ventrally, except for cranial nerve number 4. That's the trochlear nerve. That's going to exit dorsally, on the backside. Okay, but it exits and then it wraps its way around the front, so it eventually makes its way ventrally. Any other questions? Okay. The big one. Here's one big one. It's a huge cranial nerve. A lot of times when you pull the brain, it's still stuck to the outside of the brain stem. This is cranial nerve number 5. Which one is that one? Does anybody know? Good. Okay, this is cranial nerve 5. Trigeminal. A lot of functions associated with the trigeminal nerve. It's a big old nerve. This one is going to exit from the outsides of the pons bilaterally. Okay, so it's in the midbrain. So far we have 3, and then we go to 4. And then coming back down from 4, we have 5. 5's in the pons. It's the first one we're going to see in the pons. And then from the lateral aspects of the pons, we're going to move middle. Okay, you're going to move medial. And in the middle here, you're going to see at the level, about the level of the pontomedullary junction that we talked about before, you're going to see cranial nerve number 6 coming bilaterally. Okay, so most medial is going to be cranial nerve number 6 here at this pontomedullary junction. Okay, cranial nerve number 6. Anybody know the name of that one? Abducens. Okay, and then right next door to abducens, so we go 5 lateral, then we go 6 medial, and then just lateral to cranial nerve number 6 is cranial nerve number 7. Cranial nerve number 7, anyone know what one? Yeah, good. Cranial 7 is facial. Which has a lot of different functions also. So 5 lateral, come medial for 6. Just outside of that is 7. then just outside of 7, again, at the level of the pontomedullary junction, so you have 3 right in a row here. You're going to have cranial nerve number 8. So this is 8. Does anybody know 8? What's that one? Uh-huh. Good. Vestibulo-cochlear. Nerve 8. Okay, so go. So 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, 5 through 8 are in the pons proper. 1 through 4 are above the pons. Moving on down here. Now we're going back down under the pons into the medulla. So cranial nerve number 9 is in the medulla. Okay, so 9 is like that. Does anybody know cranial nerve number 9? What's it called? Good, glossopharyngeal. G-L-O. Pharyngeal. Glossopharyngeal. Okay, moving on down, still in the medulla. There's a big one, another big one. This guy's the wanderer. Cranial nerve number 10. What's that one called? Uh-huh. This is vagus. Okay, so 5, 6, 7, 8 in the pons. Below the pons, 9, just counting down, 10. And then cranial nerve number 11 is kind of a different one. Okay, cranial nerve number 11 actually is the only cranial nerve, well, it's not the only, it's one of the cranial nerves that is not part of the brainstem proper. It arises from the ventral great horn of C1 through 5. Okay, so axons from the ventral great horn of C1 through 5 actually come out and form one great big nerve, but the nerve itself is positioned up here underneath vagus. Okay. It's going to be on both sides.
Can you say what you just said again?
Yeah, and we're going to repeat that here in a minute too. But the cranial nerve number 11 is the only one, is one of the cranial nerves that does not arise in the brainstem itself. It arises from the ventral gray horn of C1 or cervical vertebra 1 through 5. So the ventral gray horn just sends out some axons and they come up together to form the 11th cranial nerve. And that bundle of axons actually travels up and is positioned very close to cranial nerve number 10 in the medulla, just underneath of it. Okay, and cranial nerve number 11. Anybody know that one? Spinal accessory, good. Spinal accessory. Okay, so counting down in the medulla, we have cranial nerve 9, 10, 11 comes from the cervical vertebra, but it's still close to vagus. And then we have cranial nerve number 12 we have something I mentioned before where we have pyramids and olives, and the pyramids are going to be in the middle. So this would be a bump that's a pyramid. This would be a bump that's an olive. Okay, the line or the sulcus that separates the pyramids and the olives is actually called the pre-olivary sulcus. Okay, so the pre-olivary sulcus. So I mentioned before that we had some bumps that were the pyramids and the olive, but right in front of the olive, or just posterior to the pyramid, is going to be your pre-olivary sulcus. And it's actually out of the pre-olivary sulcus that the 12th cranial nerve arises. Bless you. This is going to be your 12th cranial nerve. Okay. And what's the 12th cranial nerve? Good, hypoglossal. Okay, and that's all of them. So this is just looking at the overall positions of where these cranial nerves emerge from the brainstem. Eventually we're going to look to see the nuclei that they're part of or coming from, but this is just the relative locations and the positions of all the cranial nerves in the brainstem. Like I said, when we go back and look at the brains that we pulled, we're going to see a lot of these. And a lot of times cranial nerve number 3 is pretty evident. It's like a big stalk coming out up here. Cranial nerve number 5 is also often evident on the outside. It's a large nerve, as well as 12. 12 is usually there as well. Sometimes you can see 10. Questions about that? Yeah, Pat? C1 through C5. Again, we're going to go over that again. But C1 through C5 is the origin.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? No? Okay, so there's some interesting things about cranial, well, I think it's interesting anyway, if you want to ask me. But all the ones that have pure motor function, so cranial nerves have sensory function, motor function, or they can have mixed function. They can do a bunch of different things. All the nerves that are purely motor are going to be most medial. So if we look in the middle, cranial nerve number 3 is going to be only motor. Cranial nerve number 6 is only motor. And cranial nerve number 12 is only motor. They only have motor function, and they're all here in the middle. Okay, cranial nerve number 11 also is motor, but it's coming from the cervical vertebra. Okay, but if you look at the brainstem, the ones that are right smack in the middle are all motor function, 3, 6, and 12. Okay. Moving on. So let's look at, this was just, like I said, the position of the cranial nerves as they're exiting the brainstem. Now we're going to start to look at the actual function for these cranial nerves. And the first thing, I like to start easy and then work our way up to more difficult. And the easiest, I think, are the sensory cranial nerves. We have just a few sensory cranial nerves to look at, and those are going to be 1 and 2 and 8. Okay. Sent by that, I mean they only have sensory function. They don't do anything else. They just have one role to play, and that's sensation. Okay. Cranial nerve number 1, and we talked about it being above the pons proper, and that's going to be olfactory. And so, yeah, the Roman numeral, that's going to be the cranial nerve number. And then O stands for origin. So the origin, does anybody remember what's the origin of the first cranial nerve? Yeah, nasal cavity. First cranial nerve arises out of the nasal cavity. And it has one function. And for sensory, if you want to follow along with color, I'm going to keep the colors consistent for the next week or so, because it'll match with the nuclei, and it's just easier to see, I think, if you break it down by color. For sensory, I'd like to use blue, just a plain old blue, okay? And the function of the olfactory, the first cranial nerve is going to be, what's the function? Smell, yeah. Olfaction or smell. And that's in blue. Or is it blue? Question? No? I heard something. Okay. Moving on. First cranial nerve. Second cranial nerve. It's going to be your optic nerve. And where does the optic nerve originate? Retina, eyeball. Let's make it easy. We'll talk more about the retina when we cover it, but in general, it comes out of your eyeball. Exit out to the back. It has one very specific function. The function of the optic nerve is vision. Yep. Okay, purely sensory. Olfactory, optic, and then we have cranial nerve number 8 is the last one that's only sensory function. And cranial nerve number 8 is vestibulocochlear. Okay. Where is it at? Which part of the brainstem? Anybody remember where 8 comes in? 5, 6, 7, 8? Pons, yeah. Good. Lateral pons.
Did you say lateral pons or like a lateral?
Lateral pons.
Pontomedullary.
You can if you want to be that specific, sure. Yeah, and you'll see that it'll all connect as we go through. So here's the 8th cranial nerve. It's going to be here in the lateral pons. I'm just doing one side. Again, thinking about function. What's the function of the vestibulocochlear? Down, so vestibular system. So it's going to help innervate the vestibular system. It's got 2 functions, really. Yes. Good. So the vestibular system, and that's going to be involved with, somebody said, balance. So the vestibular system is actually inside your inner ear proper. Talk about it eventually as time goes on. And it has another part, the cochlear. It also innervates the cochlea. The cochlea, what is the cochlea involved in? Hearing, yep. So the 8th cranial nerve, so the cochlea and vestibular system are juxtaposed, essentially. They're part of the same bone labyrinth. The 8th cranial nerve splits off and innervates the cochlea, and it also splits off and gets to the vestibular system. So they travel independently, but then eventually become one cranial nerve that is cranial nerve number 8. Okay. Questions about sensory? That's the easy one. Okay, we got sensory now. Let's move on to motor. This little section. And here are our motor. Purely motor. Oh, wrong one. Sorry. I was going to say, it's already written on. Okay, there's your motor. Wrong copy. Okay, thinking about motor cranial nerves, we're going to have 3, 6, 4, 12, and 11. Really clear there. Okay, cranial nerve number 3. Which one's that? Ocular motor. ocular nerve. Does anybody remember where it originates?
Superior collective.
Perfect. It originates in the midbrain at the level of the superior colliculus. Colliculus, superior colliculus. Okay, it has a motor function. Anybody know what the ocular motor nerve innervates? Yeah? Pupillary constriction. Yep, we'll get to that one in a minute. It's more of a sympathetic. Anything else? Yeah, the majority of your extraocular eye muscles. We're going to talk about that. So as far motor is going to be red. Okay, so switch over to red. And ocular motor is going to be the majority of extraocular eye muscles. We're going to talk about what those are here in a little bit, but we just get the majority of them down now. And those are cranial nerve number 3. Another one that's motor is going to be levator palpebrae. Palpebrae. Does anybody know what levator palpebrae does? Eyelid opening. Yeah, somebody said, now I'm going to switch over. It has motor function. And, way back when in the beginning of the course we talked about motor function being skeletal muscle. It could also be autonomic function. So the autonomic function for cranial nerve number 3, I'm going to switch over to green. And that goes with the autonomic function. It's got two different things happening. And it's going to be involved in something known as lens accommodation. And that means nothing more than changing the shape of your lens with near and far vision. As the object moves closer, it's going to change. And then the other thing it has to do with that's ANS function is pupillary constriction. Yeah, when we get to the vision part of the course, we're going to talk more about what those things are and how light works to activate the third cranial nerve, cause pupillary constriction. Questions about that? Everybody good? Yeah, Sam? I'm sorry, what is what? Lens accommodation. It's ACCOMODATION, and that just means that the shape of the lens changes depending on whether you see something close up or far away. You know, your lens changes. So the lens of your eyeball, in your eye, and your pupils in your eye too. And depending on how much light is present, in dim light, your pupil's going to dilate. In bright light, it's going to constrict. We're going to see how that happens when we get to vision. Anybody else? Anything clear? Let's see. Yeah. That's cranial nerve number 3. And let's draw that guy in here. And again, these are just going to be on one side for the purpose of keeping it clear and not so crowded. There's cranial nerve number 3. That's your oculomotor. Rises out of the midbrain at the level of the superior colliculus. Then we have cranial nerve number 4. You can migrate over here and see that cranial nerve number 4 is going to rise here. Cranial nerve number 4 is the trochlear nerve. Where does it arise? Where's the origin? Does anybody remember? It's the midbrain. Again, it's coming from, perfect, midbrain at the level of the inferior colliculus. And again, superior and inferior colliculus or colliculi are nothing but two little bumps on the back of the midbrain. Talk about them later. Anybody know the function of the fourth cranial nerve? It has one muscle that it works with. Anybody? No? It innervates a muscle known as your superior oblique. OBLIQUE. Superior oblique. It's the eye muscle that makes your eyes look down and in. I'm going to talk about that here in a minute, but just one muscle. Again, I'm just going to put my midline in here so I know about where to place cranial nerve number 6 and 12. A little crooked at the bottom. Okay, cranial nerve number 6 is abducens. AB. Anybody remember where abducens arises from, or origin is? Yeah, it's the medial pontomedullary junction. So I'm going to put him right here. He's most medial. One of the nerves in the pons. I'm just going to say medial pons. Kind of like cranial nerve number 4 has one function in life, cranial nerve number 6 has one function in life also. Anybody know what it innervates? Lateral rectus. Makes your eye move out. Again, it's going to be red. Abducts your eye. Lateral rectus. Lateral rectus muscle. Responsible for abducting your eye. Back down to cranial nerve number 11. Again, this one is going to be your spinal accessory. And where does it originate? Yeah, ventral gray horn of C1 through C5. Great. What does the spinal accessory innervate? You guys should know that. Yep. Trap. And what else? SCM. Perfect. Trap. Sternocleidomastoid. SCM. Got it? Okay, cranial nerve number 12, that's going to be hypoglossal. Again, hypoglossal originates from the sulcus just in front of the olive, which is your pre-olivary sulcus. So it is this big old guy here. Origin is pre olivary sulcus. And that's in the medulla. What's the function of hypoglossal? Tongue motion, tongue muscles. Innervates tongue muscles. Okay, all of your motor cranial nerves come from the middle. Say that again.
Can you draw the spine accessory?
Oh, I didn't do it. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, spinal accessory. It's going to come out from the, put them on this side. So cervical vertebra C1 through C5, ventral gray horn, send out axons, and they all travel up together. It's about the middle of the medulla. And that's your spinal accessory. There's your spinal accessory. And there's your hypoglossal. Here's your trochlear. And here's your abducens. Thank you for that. Any other questions? Makes sense? Okay, so motor function, 4 comes out the middle of the back, so that's the only one that comes out ventrally, or dorsally. Everything else comes out ventrally. So oculomotor first, and then 4, and then 6 in the middle, 12 in the middle, and also 11 coming down here from the cervical vertebra. Ventral gray horn, with all motor functions. Got it? Yes. Let's look at, so talk about, a lot of these are eye muscle. You have oculomotor, you have trochlear, and you have abducens. And like I said before, the majority of your extraocular muscles are going to come from your, or be innervated by, bless you, cranial nerve number 3. So let's look at this. This is a pair of eyeballs looking at you, as opposed to what Dr. Igler thought they were. Just information. She's a fun next door neighbor. Eyeballs. Okay. So, thinking about, so I'm going to choose to draw my muscles here in just a brown color, just representative of muscles. And so it's both left and right eyeballs here. There are muscles outside your eye that are responsible for allowing you to look up or pull your eyes upward. Yeah, it's brown. Yeah, color's not important. Just brown is muscle for me. So they exist on both sides. Does anybody know what those muscles are called? Yeah, good. Superior rectus. Okay, these are going to be your superior rectus. Your superior rectus is responsible for allowing your eyes to look straight up. No change, just straight up. Superior rectus. If you have a superior rectus that allows your eyes to look up, you also have an inferior rectus that allows your eyes to look straight down. See that? Yeah. Inferior rectus. Superior and inferior rectus muscles. I talked a little bit before about cranial nerve number 6. And cranial nerve number 6 is responsible for innervating your lateral rectus, and lateral rectus just pulls your eye out to the side, to the lateral side. Abducts your eye. Lateral rectus. And of course, if you have a lateral rectus, you need a medial rectus. Medial rectus just pulls your eye, adducts your eye, pulls it straight toward the middle. Just label that in the middle. Medial rectus, pull your eye straight in. And then you have a couple of other muscles. You have muscles I talked about, innervated by cranial nerve number 4, that pulls your eyes medially and downward. Okay, it lives up here. You'll put an arrow in the direction it works in here. Okay. So this is known, it's on top, so it's your superior oblique. That's your superior oblique. Kind of comes in, pulls your eyes downward, so it's the muscle that you're using. If, for example, if you're walking down steps, you have to bring your eyes in immediately. That's going to be your superior oblique. And if you're having a superior oblique, you have to have an inferior oblique. It does the exact opposite. Pulls your eyes medially and up. So superior oblique, point your eyes down. The inferior oblique, point your eyes medially and up. Okay, so superior rectus, inferior rectus, lateral rectus, medial rectus, superior oblique, inferior oblique, all muscles that nervate, or not nervate, all muscles that are considered extraocular eye muscles that cause your eye to move in a specific direction. I talked about an easy way to remember which ones are innervated by which cranial nerves, and it's a simple chemical formula. Very simple. You remember LR6 SO4. And then all others are cranial nerve 3. So what that says is LR, lateral rectus, is innervated by cranial nerve number 6. Superior oblique is innervated by cranial nerve number 4, LR6, SO4. Everybody else is cranial nerve number 3. Cranial nerve number 3 innervates the majority. Catherine, are you okay? You look like you're struggling. Did you not read something?
I'm just thinking.
Okay, yeah, sure, absolutely. If you have questions, feel free. Yeah, LR6, SO4, so lateral rectus 6. That's cranial nerve number 6. Lateral rectus. What's the name for cranial nerve number 6? Abducens. Yeah. So lateral rectus is innervated by abducens cranial nerve, which is cranial nerve number 6. Superior oblique is innervated by the trochlear cranial nerve, which is cranial nerve number 4. So LR6, SO4, every other muscle that's here is the job of cranial nerve number 3. Questions? I've had a lot of people tell me that this helped them out on the board. So just a simple little thing to remember, LR6, SO4, kind of a standard question. you might see in your future. Not too distant future either. Goes fast. Okay. No questions? Everybody good? Let's go ahead and take a 10-minute break now, because it's a good place to break. And then